Guan Yu and Leonidas recently dropped into the daily special offer of Rise of Kingdoms, which leads to the question of, should you still invest in these two infantry commanders in 2022? Well, stick around in this video to find out why I think the answer is yes. What's up everybody, Psych out here with another Rise of Kingdoms video. Guan Yu and Leonidas recently appeared here just a couple of days ago in the daily special offer in Rise of Kingdoms. This is the latest generation of commanders showing up in the daily special offer. More recently we got added commanders like Tamiris, Saladin's been added, Constantine, even Alex I think has been here for a while. So a whole bunch of commanders have been added to the daily special offer recently. I think there were some other ones added recently as well. Attila Takeda, and that sort of makes us think that probably there will be more commanders added to the daily special offer soon, like Artemisia, or whoever came with Artemisia. I'm not actually sure. Was it Ramses or something like that? They may be added to the daily special offer as well. Look, that really leads to the question of, should you still be investing in these commanders? Are these commanders still worth getting? These are maybe third, perhaps generation infantry commanders, something like that. Should you go after them? Well, I already gave the spoiler at the start of the video. I think the answer is yes, and I think the answer is yes for both of these commanders for two different but very important reasons. So look, for Guan Yu, I think it's a really obvious no-brainer yes. I'm going to flip over here to Guan Yu to show you why. I recently expertised Guan Yu along with a whole bunch of other commanders. I'll put a card at the top for that video if you want to see me expertising a whole bunch of commanders, legendary commanders all at once. Guan Yu is just so powerful that every infantry player, even if you're not an infantry player, you really need to have Guan Yu in your lineup. His damage factor is really good, particularly for an older generation commander. He hits 3 targets with that damage factor, which is really strong, and he silences them all for 3 seconds, and that's a really, really powerful skill, which I'm going to be talking about more here in a second. Gives a reasonable stat boost. It's not great. Again, some more stat boost here, a little bit of march speed, which is valuable. And his force skill is also really good in terms of doing additional damage. Sorry, this actually doesn't do anything. This is only for rallies. Nobody rallies with Guan really anymore, so you can ignore the second skill. But this does do some additional damage factor with a chance probability when you hit the target with your first skill. And the expertise really isn't that great, but the point is Guan Yu is super powerful as an infantry commander. He's got march speed, he's got AoE, he does a lot of damage with his first skill, and he's got that silence, which is really valuable in a lot of situations. So if you're an open field player, Guan Yu is really someone you want in your lineup. You want him in Canyon, you want him in all kinds of places. Guan Yu super powerful. No brainer, you absolutely want to invest in Guan Yu. But the question really comes about Leonidas, and a lot of people would say, you know, Leo's just not a good investment. Guan Leo is no good. Leo just isn't strong anymore. Everybody wants to pair Guan with this new commander, CPO Prime. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. But I'm going to make the case that Leonidas is still actually really valuable right now. And I'm going to talk about a little bit why. So the first thing is his first skill doesn't do that much damage. It does give us a health bonus, which is really useful for Guan. And really, when you're talking about using Leo, the only real pair for him is Guan. So he gives a nice health bonus. He does do AoE damage. It's not a large damage factor, but if the target is silenced, which again, because Guan goes first, that will increase that damage factor by about 50%, which is pretty nice. So Leo is really the pair to go with Guan. If you're going to do with Leo with anything, it really belongs with Guan. So the first skill is pretty good, but the second skill is actually the really critical skill. First of all, he gives some defense bonus, which again makes Guan more tanky. Guan really doesn't have any defensive stats at all, so this really helps Guan out a lot. He gets some more health, he gets some more defense, becomes a lot tankier on the field, and doesn't just get melted right away. But the real key is this 15% rage gain. I've done a whole bunch of testing on this. You've seen my rage simulator before. I'm also going to be doing some more videos talking about rage simulators with some rage simulations anyway with Boudica Prime here in a minute. But the big key here is that 15% of speed of rage gain. It actually makes Guan Yu fire off 1 turn faster. I've done a whole bunch of testing. Guan with Alex is a reasonable pair. So is Guan with CPO. The Guan with Leo is just simply faster to fire off that first skill. And look, his next two skills just aren't that valuable. The shield, whatever, don't really care. This is a really good skill if you're going to run your Leo to the ground, but that's really not the way people fight in the open field. You don't typically run yourself into the ground, so it's really not a great skill. And the expertise really isn't that fantastic either. Again, it's one of these run your troops into the ground kind of thing that has some value, but again, that's really not how fighting works in the open field. And that's really where you want to use Leonidas. So those last three skills just really aren't that valuable, but the first two are pretty valuable in the open field. And if you have those right, because we have AoE, we've got some defensive bonuses that Guan could really use, but that speed of rage gain is the real key because it allows Guan to fire off that skill earlier. One turn earlier, firing off that skill is really important. Now, my Guan Yu is equipped also with a Horn of Fury, which again increases the speed at which he gains rage, and I think that's really critical. So, and I'll show my talent build also for Guan here. You can see that I'm also getting as much rage as I can, at least from the infantry tree here and from here, and then of course I'm getting some more rage from rejuvenate, but that's not really the key here. In a lot of open field fighting, and this is what people I think really miss when they're thinking about Guan and Leo, in a lot of open field fighting, it's all about who fires off their skill first. A lot of open field fighting, you go in, you fire off a skill, you come back. And in big, massive fights, it's all about getting those skills off and who gets those skills off first. And with Guan Yu, it's especially important to get your skill off first because it silences the targets. That means you can hit them with a skill and then they are silenced for 3 seconds if you fire before them. If you fire on the same turn as them, you actually won't do any silencing at all. You'll get nothing out of it. So it's really critical for Guan to fire one turn earlier than the opponents. If Guan fires one turn earlier, you get that silence on the enemy. You're going to do extra damage with Leo, which isn't that great. But most importantly, all of your other marches in your murder ball are going to be able to hit those targets, and those targets are going to be silenced, and they're not going to be able to hit you back, and you can get away. I mean, you can really swing fights heavily in your favor if Guan fires his skill off first, and Leonidas is the key to getting Guan to fire off his skill first. Now, a lot of people will say, well, Guan Alex is a really good pair. If you pair Guan with Leo, then you're taking Alex off the field, or Guan Scipio is a really good pair. So, I don't really want to pair Guan with Leonidas because Guan with Scipio is a very, very good pair. And that's all true. Look, if you could only use one infantry march, it would probably be Guan with Scipio. But the reality is you probably want to use 2 infantry marches in today's open field meta. And those 2 infantry marches are Guan with something, and I'm going to make the case that it's Leonidas for the reasons I just talked about. And the other is you're going to want to have Scipio. You want to have Scipio in the field. Scipio is just way too powerful an open field commander. His AoE, a very big damage factor on his AoE, and he reduces the health of the enemy, so there's a big debuff. He's got a bunch of extra damage here and a bunch of march speed. He's actually very, very fast on the field. He's got infantry health. He also does insta-proc damage. That's damage over time, which is really good. And then he has a little bit of tankiness, reducing the skill damage that he takes. And so really, and this is one that actually is valuable when the target is silenced, but he also does an extra 10% skill damage. So Scipio is really strong. As an open field commander, you absolutely want to have in your lineup. So again, a lot of people go Guan Scipio. That's going to be my infantry march. But I think you want to have 2 infantry marches. And the reason for that is because if you go Guan Scipio, we get back to this age-old problem of what to do with Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great is an excellent commander. He's still really good in the late game, in the Season of Conquest part of Rise of Kingdoms. And the reason he's really good is because of this expertise right here. It's not about the shielding so much, although that's actually kind of valuable, but it's really about causing 3 enemy troops to take 30% increased damage for 4 seconds. That is a lot of damage increase. That is a big area of effect debuff that in a murder ball situation, in a big field fight situation, you really want to have. And it has a lot of value. Again, if you think about the middle of an Archon of Osiris fight, you want to have some Alexander the Greats in there, causing those enemies to take an extra 30% damage. And so the question has always been, if you go Guan with Leo, what do you do with Alex? And believe it or not, I think the answer is actually Scipio Prime. You might remember back in this KVK, I talked a lot about wanting to run Scipio with Honda as a secondary. I thought that would be a really nice pair, and I was going to put XY back with Alexander Nevsky here. But ultimately, I decided, you know what? I don't want to do that because I want to have Guan Yu, and I want to have Alex, and I want to have Scipio all on the field. And the only way to do that is to bring in another infantry commander. Now, there are other infantry commander choices. You could look at commanders like Harold. You could look at Pakal. But I just don't think they really pair very nicely with what we're trying to do in an open field kind of murder ball kind of situation. You could look at Richard. You could look at Charles Martel. They're just really not that playable, I think, in the Season of Conquest. So that leaves you with Guan Leo, which is a really nice combo because, again, that silence firing off first is so critical. By silencing those enemy troops, all of your other marches get to pound on those enemy troops before they can even hit you back. That's really critical. Leo helps Guan fire first, which is really, really important. And then by putting Alex with Scipio, we get a lot of utility. Alex has the debuff, Scipio has a debuff. They both have AoE debuffs. Scipio does area of effect damage. You might remember in KVK2, one of the most premier marches was Alex with YSG. Why was Alex with YSG so powerful? Alex does this AoE debuff. He does a lot of damage. He does insta-proc damage. And YSG has an area of effect skill damage, right? So you get Alex debuffing those targets and then YSG pounding them with an area of effect damage skill. Well, that's exactly what Scipio does. He has a big area of effect damage skill. So if you have Alex as the primary, you get that Alex debuff going, followed immediately by the Scipio big area of effect. And of course, there's also some debuff left over from Scipio as well. Now, you could make the case, and I've seen people do this. People have made the case that they want to have Scipio primary with Alex as the secondary. That's a very reasonable way to go as well. The real advantage of doing Scipio as the primary is that you're getting that health reduction. You're getting that debuff going first, followed by anything else that might come after that. And the other reason to do Scipio primary is because you get to fire off his skill first. And then the final reason is really because he has the support tree, which I think many people would say is a better tree than, for example, the attack tree that Alex has. Now, personally, I have gone with Alexander the Great first. The reason I've gone with him first is because I want this skill. I want his active skill to go off first. I want those troops. I want that debuff to be hitting while all my other marches are firing off their skills. I want those taking 30% increased damage and it being hit with big time skill damage from all of my other marches. So I want Alex to be my primary. I want that skill to go off first. And then I want Scipio's skill to hit second and do that area of effect damage. So the reason I've been doing it, I've been doing Alex as the primary. I'll just show real quickly the talent build I've been using. This is one I've been using for a while with Alex. Basically, it's most of the infantry tree. And then I get some stuff in the attack tree here. I actually like effortless a lot because if the battle goes on for a little bit, I really start doing a lot more damage. I like the fight to the death because, again, I like to just put out as much damage with this march as I can. And this march actually does a lot of damage. We've got insta-proc damage from Alex. We've got insta-proc damage from Scipio, damage over time from Scipio, area of effect damage from Scipio. This march actually has done a ton of damage in this KVK. I don't actually know. I don't think I actually have any recent reports, but I've been fighting a whole bunch with this march, and it's been a really, really strong march this KVK. So all of that to say that I think Scipio, when he first came out, I didn't recognize this, but I think now I recognize that Scipio was the answer we were looking for to the Alex question. It was always the question of what to do with Alex. If you go Guan Leo, what do you do with Alex? Okay, well, maybe you dump Leo and you just go Guan Alex. That way you can have that Alex on the field. But now we finally got our answer. The answer is you go Guan with Leo, you go Alex with Scipio, or Scipio with Alex if you prefer the support tree, if you prefer Scipio as the primary commander. But those are your two, I think, in my opinion, meta murder ball infantry marches. I wouldn't go any more than that. I don't think Alex with Harold is very good. I mean, it does a lot of damage, but it's not tanky at all, and it kind of just gets wrecked in the open field if anybody targets it. But you get a lot more tankiness with Scipio. You get a lot more damage output right away with Alex and Scipio. I think that that Alex Scipio or Scipio Alex is the way to go. Guan Leo being your other march. Now, the real caveat, the one thing I will say that's really sort of a downside with Guan Leo is in the open field, that march is slow as heck. It gets a little bit of march speed from Guan, but really it doesn't have any march speed at all from Leonidas, and it's pretty slow. Whereas that Alex Scipio march is unbelievably fast. Alex has a lot of march speed for an infantry commander. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, so Alex adds 30%. I think Scipio also adds 30% march speed as well. Yeah, so it's 15% while just regularly at another 10% when marching outside of Alliance territory. So there's another 25% from Scipio. So as an open field march, Alex Scipio is actually very fast. I think it ends up being my third fastest march. Only the cav marches outrun it. It outruns archer marches even as an infantry march, which is really impressive. So that's the way I would recommend going in today's meta. If you're an open field fighter, you've got to have Guan out there. I think you've got to have Alex out there, and I think you've got to have Scipio out there. And so that fourth commander, the one that you really want to bring to the field, in my opinion, is a Leonidas, because he does add AoE. He makes that Guan fire off his skill a turn earlier, which can really turn the tide in an open field brawl. And you don't have to invest much. You can go 5-5-1-1 with Leonidas and be pretty happy with that. You don't really have to go out and expertise him, because all you really want to do is get him to boost Guan a little bit and help Guan do that first skill a little bit faster. So that's my recommendation, and that's why I think Leonidas is still worth investing in 2022, because he solves the Alex problem and he makes your Guan fire that much faster, winning those big murder ball fights. Look, if you enjoyed this content, give this video a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in the next one.